Right, so now I want to know who's in the room. Okay, so put your hands up if you are an LCC student. Oh, great. Put your hands up if you're a CSM student. Oh. Put your hands up if you're an LCF student. Oh. What about CCW? Chelsea? Oh, that's not good, is it? Yeah. Okay, now put your hands up if you're staff. Yay!
Big round of applause for the staff.
I'm really happy. Let's see down here. Come down here. Okay, so I'm really glad to have you all here. This is the second of our series. What we're trying to do is have an event every month, except December because it's holiday season, at each of the different sites. So our first one was at CSM, and that was around cuts in the arts. This one, as you know, is around social media and broadcasting. So we have this wonderful panel, including representation from the BBC, academic, and student. So we should be good. Now, B, are you ready? Yeah. All right. Thank you. No, you're not ready. No.
Right. So I hope everyone's on Twitter. Follow us right now and hashtag everything. So thank you all for coming. I want to extend my welcomes to you. I think it's really, really, really nice that you guys have spent part of your day to come here today. So I'm going to introduce you to the panelists and they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. So we've got Lawrence, Rishma and Aaqil. So should we start with Rishma? Rimsha.
You've known me for so long now. Yeah, I'm a third year illustration student here at LCC. Well, I got in contact with Bea not so long ago and she asked me to speak at this event. A lot of it's just based on things that I'm interested in and my political and social views on certain things that make me angry, things that interest me. So yeah, it's sort of like a student approach to all of this. I hope, yeah.
She's amazing. So last year, Rimsha done a Charlie Hebdo and Free Speech conference, and she also helped in the Stand Up to Racism rally. So she's actually amazing. Can we give her a big round of applause, please? Thank you. We also have Aaqil Ahmed. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I'm the head of religion and ethics at the BBC, and as I'm senior manager at the BBC. If you're tweeting, then it's good to know that, because then obviously I'll become a BBC person. It's the way it works, I'm afraid, because I'll just get in trouble. So I've been working for probably too long, but I've worked at the BBC and at Channel 4. I've done a lot of programmes from current affairs to religion to documentaries. I've been sport even, and I've been the head of multicultural programming at Channel 4. I've been involved in, I was in current affairs on September the 11th, 2001, and I was in religion and ethics on September the 12th, as it were, because up to before September the 11th, I was an expert on terrorism, and no one really cared about the fact that I was an expert on terrorism. But on September the 11th, I suddenly became one of the most important people around, as it were. So I've made a lot of programmes. I've had two Emmy nominations for programmes on terrorism. And I've made, met and interviewed lots of people, so I know about that particular side of it. I've also made the first ever programs on Muhammad or the Hajj or the Qur'an or all those things as well in the West. And so in terms of religion, whether it be Islam or any other kind of religion for that matter, I've had to learn to have a detailed understanding of it. And for interest to many of you guys, I graduated with a degree in photography and film in the days when they were called photography and film. And I teach at the moment as a professor, appointed professor at Middlesex University. That's me, sorry.
Thank you. Can we give Aaqil a big round of applause? Aaqil is also part of the curriculum cohesive group, Curriculum for Cohesion.
Sorry, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, sorry, we've just thought it'd be of interest. I'm a patron of something called the Curriculum for Cohesion, which is an organisation, you go online and have a look at it, it's an organisation which is trying to push out a more rounded view on history, particularly from those of other faiths. And I put some of that into practice this Sunday. We had you can watch it on iPlayer. If you missed it, we had a documentary on BBC One called Sophia, Suffragette Princess, which was a story of the granddaughter of Dalip Singh, who was the last ever Sikh, who was the last ever Maharaja of India, and she was the goddaughter of Queen Victoria, and the suffragette completely written out of the history books because she's the goddaughter of Queen Victoria. She's not just some society woman. And she threw herself under Asquith's car and all those kind of things. He was a prime minister at the time. So she was a big, big player, but she's been written out of the history books, and I'll leave that for you to guess as to why she was written out of the history books.
Thank you once again. So we've also got Lawrence here, and he is from LCC. He's a lecturer and also does some great other things as well, which he's going to tell you about now.
Yeah, I'm just figuring out how to follow that from it's like a long list of achievements. I work here at LCC part-time. Huge interest in media and the arts, and I try to combine that with what I do here. So to try and provide industry experiences for some of you guys. Recently, I think it's on here, took 4 very lucky students from here to go and work at Rock Nation with Jay-Z over the summer, so that's a really good project. We've done work with Coca-Cola and Vitamin Water, responded to some live briefs from Island Records, some students, I don't know if they're here, worked on Disclosure's campaign for the new album. So it's really about, what I try and do is really bring the industry element of working in the creative industries and fuse it with your studies. Done a few other things, but we're probably running out of time, so you can just read it on here on the bike. But yeah, I'm just interested in young people creativity and kind of preparing you for the realness of what you're going to get into once you graduate.
I think you're going to have a lot of members of the audience grabbing you when you leave. Can we give a big round of applause to So, we are here today to discuss race, religion and free speech and the power of broadcast and social media. The first question that I'll be asking the panel today is, does the broadcast media highlight fears and concerns of immigrant and migrant minorities living in the UK? I'll direct that question first, is okay?
So, does the broadcast industry... do it again, yeah.
Okay. Does the broadcast media highlight fears and concerns of immigrant and migrant minorities living in the UK?
Well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that lots of people have fears and concerns, and if we get outside of London, then we have to realise that London isn't reflective of the rest of the country as well. So there are lots of people around the country who would look at this room and be terrified by it, because they wouldn't recognise this. And I know that because I work in some of those places. You know, I was in Belfast last Friday on business, and I'll tell you what, this would be diversity for the whole of Belfast. You know, this number. So we've got to understand that there is outside of London and outside of some of the big cities, there is a different conversation that we might find difficult, but actually they find, you know, what's happening around them a different thing to understand as well. Now, when it comes to migrant communities as well, I mean, if you know, do Google if you want, Google on some of the stuff that I've had to put up with personally, but also Google the stuff that we did when I took Songs of Praise to Calais. So I was reading the newspaper and I saw a little photograph of a church in the jungle, as the camp, they call it the jungle in Calais. And I went and spoke to the Songs of Praise team and said, you should go to Calais. Well, they didn't know how to do Calais because that's out of their comfort zone. And so we looked into it, so we decided to go to Calais, and I went to Calais because I thought I needed a senior manager with them to make sure it didn't go wrong, and the only person I could send was a Scouser, and I thought, I speak a bit of Arabic and Urdu and all those things, so I think I'd be more useful than some guy from Liverpool because they wouldn't understand the word he was saying. So I went out instead, and if you see the kind of outrage that we initially got from the Express and the right-wing newspapers saying, how dare they go there, this is outrageous, wasting licence fee payers' money, why are we doing this? It shows, one, a lack of knowledge of what Christianity actually is and why that would be of interest to a Christian audience, but also it shows a lack of understanding that there is more than one dynamic in the conversation. So does broadcast media, and if you use that, and broadcast media would normally mean television and radio and online rather than newspapers, does broadcast media understand it? Yeah, I think it does. But the thing is, if you don't watch or read or listen to absolutely everything, then you don't know what people are doing. And the thing is, for most of us who do things of that nature, you know, we've got a film that we're making right now about people and living, you know, people who are refugees coming in, who are actually, you know, people giving them shelter in their houses and feeding them and all that stuff. So we're making a program about that as well. So all of this stuff is ongoing, but it's very hard to kind of like put your finger on it and say, is the broadcast media good or bad? Because news, generally, not very good, because news stories tend to be about issues. But away from that, there's a lot of it. Is there enough of it? I don't know, because the answer is, as I go back to that original point, in other parts of the country, it's not as big an issue as it is for us here, and it is in big cities. So whether you think that's a cop-out answer or not, it's not meant to be. It's just meant to be a nuanced answer which says, I think they do all right. Could they do better? Yes, but there are a lot of people who don't get it, because for them it's not an issue.
Thank you very much for your answer.
I think, yeah, so I think broadcast media does highlight fears and concerns of immigrant people that come into this country. It just depends, because Aaqil said that the news and broadcast is a bit different in terms of the news tend to be more biased, I guess. They have I think anyway, they have an agenda to put out, but broadcast can be wide range of different people like putting things out there, so it just really depends. I think recently I don't think it's done any favors for people who are minorities or immigrants. That's how I feel when I look at when I you know, watch a video about it on BBC or maybe not Channel 4, but maybe like Sky. It's always highlighting you know, the negativity of it. Like there was one that I've watched before was about these refugee camps in Calais and how they're violently breaking out or something. Really, you know, it's just that the media they only pick and choose bits that they want to show, and I don't think it does. I don't think it shows the whole picture. I think.
Sorry, I was there. Tell you what, you wouldn't want to go there. And after I spoke Arabic with the Ethiopians, so we got all the filming we needed.
Yeah.
After we left, it's very important when you're in it's very dangerous, by the way, situation. When you shouldn't spend more than a couple of hours. You leave and you come back because you don't want people to know your patterns. While I was away for those 2 hours, the next crew that went in to do the same stuff that we done, which was to tell the story of the church and what did it mean and why did they build the church, were held at knife point and had all their stuff taken off them. And then later on there was riots and all that stuff. So it is actually, I'm not defending it, because actually calling it the jungle I think is a big mistake in the first place for the media. But it is a rough place, and actually those riots were happening because I saw them.
Of course, but what the media doesn't talk about is that, you know, why it's becoming like that. Because again, if you're just going to shove people like that in a certain really disgusting place as well, you are going to get people who are just going to be frustrated and angry, and they're going to be hostile towards, especially people in the media. They're going to hate them even more. So obviously, I'm not saying that it's not like that, but it's just the media doesn't help. You know, it kind of goes with the whole story of these people are basically like, if we let them in our country, I wonder what's going to happen. Like if they came into society, they're not civil. I think that's
Thank you very much, Florence. What do you think?
I've got kind of two points to raise, which might kind of encapsulate my thoughts. I think the first point is that, you know, it's back to this thing about agenda. You know, people set the news agenda, the editors, the Today programme, wherever, and those editors, the majority of them are from a certain type of background. So that's the agenda they set. Now, there needs to be more representation in the newsroom. So when the agenda's set, you're looking at it from different viewpoints. That's the first point I make. The second point I make is, because of Twitter, I love Twitter, I'm on it, sometimes you get a skewed version of the story. So again, I might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'll just give the example. I follow Piers Morgan on Twitter, because sometimes these tweets are funny. But when Piers Morgan tweets that all Muslims have a duty to say that ISIS is bad and they should make a stand, that's a bit wrong, because what he's doing, he's then inadvertently, he's attaching Muslims to ISIS, which are two different things in my opinion. So for the person who can't distinguish the difference between the two, they might say, oh well, if Piers Morgan's saying that all Muslims are responsible for ISIS and perhaps all Muslims are bad, and I think you've just got to be really, really careful. And when I saw that tweet, I was a bit, it could be dangerous. That's what I'm saying. It could be really, really dangerous when you have people with as many followers of him saying things like statements like that. It can because why should I shouldn't be responsible for what any black male does, So it's just pushing it all together, where I think he should probably use his influence. He should be a bit more intelligent about it.
Thank you very much. I think that leads perfectly onto my next question of how is social media shaping the news with regards to those that can be described as on the margins in society. I'm going to I'll bring that point back to you again.
Well, again, when you look at hashtags, it's easy now, like to generate a campaign by just getting a hashtag and getting people on board. And I think that, again, it's down to the journalists, it's down to the tastemakers, it's down to the people who've got the voices. But with regards to coming back to the question, we could take what happened in Ferguson as an example. Can I talk about that, Black Lives Matter? I know what I want to say. It's much easier to have a voice now than it was when I started out as a journalist without social media. It's much, much easier to have a voice. So those voices which weren't getting heard as much, like in Ferguson or wherever, all it needs now is for social media to get on board, hashtag, and there's awareness raised of an issue. So yes, social media can help highlighting minority stories.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everything coexists. You have what you call it's really important to differentiate between, say, television and radio and newspapers. So television and radio, television is heavily regulated. So if you think something is biased, you can complain, and quite frankly, people like me and our programs are regularly investigated, because there's always somebody who has a problem. And if you can bring in various different examples of what people like and don't like. But the thing about the thing that we have to understand is that regulation means that in general you might not like what's being said, but you know what you're getting is factually correct because it can be challenged. The problem with social media and other things that we'll come across, other websites, is there is no regulation. So therefore, people can say what they want. Now, that's all right as long as we're educated enough to know what we're getting. So when Piers Morgan says something ridiculous like that, then we kind of the average person, as quite rightly says, might read that and say, yeah, I bloody agree. They should all come out and say this, without any kind of knowledge or background to what's going on. So in that sense, there is an issue with social media for me. The bigger question is what social media has done is given people a voice and given us access, with user-generated content, all of those kind of things. And we did an experiment last summer to reach out to young Muslims. Again, a hard-to-reach group for mainstream broadcasters. And we did it around a social media initiative called My Ramadan, and it worked, and it was using things. Now, the weird thing is, we did Facebook and Twitter worked really well, and Instagram, but we did things like on Periscope and all these things, and actually nobody used it. 80 people use Periscope, whereas tens of thousands would use something else, or hundreds of thousands use YouTube. So knowing what social media is and which ones you should use are really important, but also knowing what people's agendas are. And that's my worry about social media, is if it becomes where people get most of their kind of information from, and it's completely unregulated, and people get used to that, then the problem you're going to have is there's going to be no quality control. And I think that quality control is the thing we have to worry about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so with regards to the question, I think social media, yeah, it's true, it's not regulated because it's just anyone posting anything, especially on Twitter or Facebook. But when it comes to social media's used in a way to challenge mainstream news or media outlets, I think it's done really well, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Really, really challenged Fox's way of viewing Black Lives Matter protesters. The way they portrayed them as thugs, criminals, you know, all these kind of words were used to describe these protesters, where some of them were angry, they were breaking things, but the way the words that were used to describe them, and then the words they used to describe white people who had, I think it was a game or something, and then they started rioting on the streets. So it was just like, oh yeah, supporters going crazy or something, but just like basically just trivializing the issue. But with regards to social media, there's a lot of people being educated, especially with Black Lives Matter, about what the issue is, and that's something that I don't think mainstream media is ever gonna, you know, I don't know now anyway, that's gonna actually look at that and actually look at it in an open way and not be biased, rather than, you know, pushing this one agenda about, you know, this Black Lives Matter movement is like a black supremacist, like I've heard, I think on Fox or something, they said something like that. I don't think, yeah, it's true, social media is unregulated, but when it comes to important issues that affect people, such as minority groups like black people, and they're voicing their problems, their turmoils, things that are going on. So like posting 4 videos of, you know, people who are being shot, and a lot of that is proof, whereas in the news, they'll only take the bits they want. So, especially with the Michael Brown case, like it was clear he had no weapon, but they were always going to twist it and criminalize the boy. Whereas on social media, someone posting that video just shows clearly what's going on, and he was shot unarmed. So, I think social media has helped, I guess, with certain movements that have started by just, you know, a hashtag. So.
Can I just add something to that point? It's a bit more light-hearted, and I'm going to expose myself as an X Factor fan. But it was on X Factor.
You're not allowed.
So there's and again, just highlighting it. It happened on Saturday's episode. So any of you familiar?
Yeah.
Do you watch it?
I watch.
Come on. Everyone's like,
Sorry, this
anyway,
group is too young for X Factor.
they do, but they just don't admit it. But I'm going to tell the story anyway. So there's one of the contestants went out. It's called Anton. Yeah, everyone's like, yeah, we know. Yeah, going on the big stage. And he's a very, very camp guy. And he was having a bit of a contretemps with Nick Grimshaw. And he said, I'm not fake, blah, 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 blah. And then immediately, if you went on social media, apparently he became aggressive. So there's a journalist called Dan Wootton, who used to write for The Sun, I think. And he's like, he's really aggressive, oh my gosh. And they started portraying him as this aggressive guy because he stood up for himself. Now, and basically people are saying if it was a white contestant, he would have been assertive. But because he's a black contestant, he was aggressive. So I actually, you can see it on my timeline, I actually tweeted Dan Wootton back and said, a camp guy with a little dog and he's really aggressive. Have you met him and he's aggressive? Or is that just your view of him? Obviously he didn't tweet back. But it's things like that which really, really, you know, it really highlights what happens with social media. That's my point. I watch X Factor. Judge me.
I think it's really important when we look at the Black Lives Matter movement as well. We look at what happens in the UK. So, for example, with Mark Duggan, when the broadcast media were using his pictures, they were only using a very they selected half the picture that they were using, and then it became apparent on social media he was actually at his daughter's grave. So it's very interesting from my perspective of what the broadcast media chooses to portray, which goes to the masses, but social media actually, even though it is to the masses, who is using social media. And I think, you know, millennials are the ones who use it the most, but yet we don't vote. So we also don't have any kind of
do you know what though?
voice in the
I wanted to
political
sound like a
movement.
boring old fart. By the way, I'm not a boring old fart. Just wanted to get that across. And I am, as you said, the way they describe me is controversial Muslim. Because obviously as a Muslim bloke, or the Daily Mail, when they want to give me a bad time, they say, they don't put a photograph in and they say bearded Muslim. You know, I mean, you've got a bigger beard than me, quite frankly, because they want people to think he's got a beard down here and he's got a hook for a hand. So I get all of that. But that goes back to that regulated point again, which is obviously in Fox in America, it's a little bit like newspapers here, and the news in America is like our newspapers, which is if you have a particular persuasion, that's what you go to. So if you're basically a right-wing, you know, neocon type person, you go to Fox News and you want stories that say Muslims bad, black people, keep away from them, unless they're Republicans, you know. You get all of that. If you are a centre-left person here, you'll be reading The Guardian or The Independent or The Times or something like that, because that's what you agree with. And when it comes to photographs like that, a broadcaster has a completely different relationship, because the fact of the matter is, I don't know what the rest of the photograph said, but if there are children in there, if there's that grave shot in there, you can't put it out, because effectively, what is that particular person, and you're giving away you're giving away way too much information that you would necessarily need to do, because it's not relevant to the actual story. But something completely unregulated, you put it out there, and there's no comeback for the people who may be, I'm not saying in this instance, but people who may be offended and hurt, and actually want to challenge that kind of tweet, etc. Now, the thing to always remember is, and this is the thing I always have to tell, we have to tell people internally in the BBC or any broadcaster as well, is when you put something out on Twitter, you have published. So somebody can sue you. You will be sued for libel, defamation, all of those things, because effectively you have published. You haven't just put it, it's not private, you have published it. So it's no different to putting out a television show or writing an article or publishing a book. A tweet is a published form of media. So always remember that. Somebody can come hunt you down and make you pay for what you said or shown.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stop my questions now, and I think it would be really useful to ask the audience some questions. So can I have questions, please? Come on, you guys must have questions.
Suggestion. Hi, David.
Stand up and introduce yourself.
This is my first time in the UK.
Okay.
I'm an American living in China for the last 7 years or so, here on a trip. But in terms of regulation of social media, it might be worth actually studying China's, because it is regulated. So for example, I think if you have something that you publish on social media and it's like re-Weibo 500 times, if it becomes, if it passes that mark, you can be subject to like a law for spreading rumors. So that's just something, I guess, a suggestion to check out in terms of analyzing global social media.
What do you think about that suggestion question? Should we be regulating social media in the UK, or should it stay unregulated and people should be able to add their voice to the conversation?
I think it should stay unregulated, personally. I think that there are two issues. One is that even if it's unregulated, what you want is a degree of sophistication that people understand, so they get it from a variety of different sources. So effectively they understand that Piers Morgan example, that may not be the actual only view on the subject. So there's that, and then secondly, that for there to be some kind of enforcement of libel and all those things when people do just spread malicious gossip and lies. Yeah.
I agree with that as well.
You agree?
Yeah,
Any other questions? I've got more questions if you guys don't have questions.
Thanks very much for what you said.
Please stand up and introduce yourself.
Sorry.
My name's Pratar. Nice to meet you. Is there anything at the BBC or elsewhere which you feel you can't talk about?
What subject?
Yeah, or things that you might want to say that you feel are not, it's not possible to have that conversation in the public sphere?
No. No. Is there anything you think?
Well, I
Is there
think
anything
no,
you're
the audience feel
alluding to? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Something about the kinds of conversations I feel that I'm party to or involved in normal life that are not reflected certainly in some of the mainstream channels. But maybe it's more interesting to ask the audience.
Well, you asked the question. What like? What do you think is not being covered?
Well, there was there's that documentary that Trevor Phillips did around what can and can't be said around race, and I know that some of the students here have seen that and have got views about that, and that would be one area. Do you want to?
So if this paper, terms of reference, we use Trevor Phillips' example to inform the discussion, and Philip, I've got his quote here. Philip believes. I think that's a really good question. Thank you for that. So Trevor Phillips, for anyone who doesn't know, was the former Equality Chief Officer, and he stated, the media has become terrified of discussing race and multiculturalism has become a racket.
Yeah.
Should we discuss that?
I think there are two separate things there. I think the question about is there anything you can't discuss? No. Because I can think of every single programme that I've made, just personally, never mind what the thousands of other people have made as well. So I've done everything where, you know, people have said some pretty horrible things about historical figures, etc., which you would expect not to have said. So I've been invited to various countries like Denmark to explain to them why I've got awards for having programmes where they've called Mohammed a paedophile and all those things are on my programmes. Muslims have given me awards for that. Not for that, but actually for the programme that was part of, versus them having death threats, etc. So that's the difference, because it's all about context and how you deal with something. So that's one thing I'd say. I don't think any subject is taboo. It's how you approach it is the issue, and why you approach it, importantly. My big thing is when people set out to say, I'm just doing this because I want to offend you, then you might as well not bother putting it out, and then also don't be surprised when people get offended. But if you offend people because it's part of the story or the particular narrative journey that you're on, then that's a whole different conversation. But Trevor, I know Trevor very well, and in fact we did a session together about a week or so ago. What he's saying is something else, which is there are certain subjects, and it goes back to that whole thing about lack of knowledge and a lack of literacy in the subject area. There are things which people don't understand, and I can go back 10 years ago when I was at Channel 4 trying to explain to people, and they got it there at the time, which was we have a problem with diversity, because diversity at that point had just become a box-ticking exercise where the people we may be helping didn't necessarily need our help, and what is true diversity if the people we take on are culturally, internally, just the same as everybody else? Surely diversity is about having people with different opinions, different points of view, different outlooks on life from different parts of the world, and from different parts of Britain for that matter. So what's happened now is diversity has become, or multiculturalism has become something which people find very easy to have a conversation about in very sanitised ways. And what we don't want to do is have more deeper conversations about why certain groups might be failing, why there are issues, socio-economic issues which affect all of us, why, and I just say this going back to, you know, the demise of grammar schools and all those kind of things. I've gone on a massive journey from being a comprehensive supporter to wanting grammar schools reintroduced, because now we've got a whole bunch of people, whatever your cultural background, who all go to bloody private school, and at the end of that they then make all the rules, and they then become all our bosses. And so the people, the working class person that might have got a break through the grammar school system is no longer there. So all the things he's talking about are about, we don't know what the dialogue is anymore, because no one understands what the dialogue is, because the people who shape what that dialogue is are all the same, irrespective of what their colour is. They are all the same. And other people who understand things differently are no longer allowed to speak at the party. And that's the problem that Trevor's trying to get at, which is we are scared to have that conversation because the people controlling the conversation want it on their own terms, which is the terms they understand in their own particular circles.
Thank you, Lawrence. Do you think we're scared to have this conversation? Are we scared?
I think it's just about lack of understanding and what you can say and what you cannot say, what might be deemed offensive, what isn't. So I think people are a little bit tentative. I don't know about scared, and it depends. When you say scared, which sides do you mean? Do you mean as just?
So, you know, there's offending and there's free speech. Are we not using free speech anymore because we're scared to be offensive because, you know, but now we live in a world of political correctness?
I think when people use free speech, they're deemed, or they're kind of seen as like kind of troublemakers or radicalists or people who want to create trouble. But I know it's a real hard one because without a kind of real tangible experience, it's just I can't really give something really solid and
So if we look at Katie Hopkins, for example, she uses her platform really well to spout off her free speech, and then also in this report there's a young girl called Bahir who tweeted "kill all white men," and it's a very political tweet, and it's actually used quite a lot in feminist queer circles.
Yeah.
So if we use those two examples,
of course that's bad. Kill all white men.
Of course it's bad.
Yeah, of course it's bad. You don't need to ask me about it.
No, it's definitely bad. But what I'm saying is that she got the CPS going to her house. She got arrested.
Yeah.
Katie Hopkins, however, hasn't. So who does
But
free
was she
speech
saying?
apply to?
Yeah.
Who does it apply to and who doesn't it apply to?
I was just going to say, when it comes to the notion of free speech, usually because we have a whole non-regulated platform to spout whatever we want off. The thing is, in reality, free speech is only really reserved for somebody who has power and the power to spread the discourse. So people like writers, people like journalists. So, for example, when the Charlie Hebdo attacks had happened, it was mostly journalists and writers and authors who were all kind of passing off their views to one another, and everyone else who was public, who was the public and just the general people, didn't really have much of a room. So that's really what happens whenever the subject of free speech is brought up. It isn't really talking about people as citizens. It's just talking about people who have the power and and the ability to spread their platform. Really, it really is just that.
I think it's got a lot to do with context and a certain political climate we live in as well. So obviously saying kill all white men, I don't think Bahar meant kill all white men, and it is a political statement because of the oppression of people of colour, and it's particularly women of colour and queer people. So when she says that she's not saying let's kill all white men. It's really, really, people. I don't think people understand what she meant. Obviously, what she meant was very, very
I think if you read it on surface level,
surface level, oh my god, what's she saying? But when you actually read into it, there's reasoning behind it. There's definitely, I don't want to get into it, but if you read about it, you'll understand. But then you have people like Katie Hopkins on the basis of just, those Palestinian rodents, they should be bombed or something like that. That's just hate. I agree with free speech. Okay, use your free speech, but it's there's a difference between having an opinion on something, and then there's a difference between marginalising a group of people even more. You have a lot of hateful supporters, and they're going to support that, and they're going to spread that everywhere. So,
sorry, can I just take your point?
Hiya, yeah. So my name's Max. So Katie Hopkins is well known for spouting lots of horrible things, but she doesn't encourage people to break the law, which kill all white men is. And you say you don't really want to get into why you think it's okay, and I think it's okay.
Okay. Could you want to explain more how she encouraged people to break the law?
Well, I mean, it's an order, isn't it? Kill all white men.
Okay.
I think Katie Hopkins is her job, so she makes money out of this, whether her opinions or her charisma. So that might be different to the role of Bahar Mustafa. Though I think that was a bit of a witch hunt, what happened in the media and the person who first published that. But I think that's like completely different cases. And for Charlie Hebdo, I think it's because they attacked the press. That's why the debate was between writers and journalists and not for the public. That's why it's different this time. So
I think sometimes you have to be careful at the timing as well. I don't know if you, when there was a question time, I think it was about the day after or a couple of days after 9/11, and they actually had the American ambassador on, and on the panel, and you had a few people. I think the sensitivity, you know, there were questions that, you know, I mean, I've gone on to make lots of programs, and I said, you know, got some awards and all that stuff for them as well. But the programs were asking the same questions these people were asking to the American ambassador about chickens coming home to roost and the whole notion of Bin Laden being a creation of the CIA, etc. Probably not the right time to do it within 24 or 48 hours of an attack. So I think sometimes freedom of speech is something that we have to, and I would say this about some of those right-wingers as well, so it's for everybody. Freedom of speech is something sometimes that we have to cherish, but also understand that there are times when it would be so inappropriate to have that level of freedom of speech that we have to think about when is the right time to say things as well, because the weight we give to things at times can be incredibly offensive. And I think with Charlie Hebdo, the conversations we've had about Charlie Hebdo since are very different to the ones that were had in the first week or so after the event.
Can I just add, Bahar Mustafa was scrutinised for her tweet, but where are the people who started Kill All Muslims? Where are the people who started that?
Yeah.
No one's.
I'm not defending that, but you're defending this.
No, but when she meant kill all white men, she didn't mean kill all white men. When you look at what the hashtag meant, it's about whiteness as a structure, not whiteness as people. And I think that's where people get confused, is whenever a person of colour speaks about white supremacy, they're always...
What was the context? Talk about the context.
The context of the...
I'll describe the context.
Yeah.
So the context of Bahar Mustafa's tweet is that she wanted to create a safe space for black and minority ethnic women. So I don't know, anyone familiar with safe spaces in this room? So if you're not, a safe space is where you self-organise. So I can say, today I'm going to do an event and it's only open to black and minority ethnic women due to the oppressions because we face in society. So therefore, we want to be free to discuss our views without having other people from other races or men intervene in our conversation. So there's certain times when people realise they need allies and certain times they want to self-organise. So in this instant, Bahar Mustafa created the event, and then when she had the event, loads and loads of white men ended up coming and they were really annoyed with her. And then she was talking about in a structural way, like white men always want to get involved in these conversations. They don't understand when it's time to be an ally and when it's time to let people of colour have a platform to speak by themselves. So then she did tweet kill all white men, and she was heavily scrutinised. She was in about 12 or 15 newspapers for like 16 weeks with her face. She suffers mental health issues. She describes herself as a woman of colour as well, and it wasn't an order because there's no time in society that white men have ever faced being killed. Like it's never happened. It's never happened in history.
White men are on the hierarchy. They can never be hunched down like that and scrutinised for being white. It's just never going to happen, and it's not happening. So it's not the same as saying kill all Muslims or kill all black people because
it's happened.
It's happened and it's happening actually. So
you think it's okay?
I'm not saying. I don't think you understand
We're
what
not
it means.
saying it's okay.
No one's going to go physically down and hunt white men and kill them because that's
Max,
not
no
happening.
one's coming for you. No one's coming for you. Let's move it along. You're right now.
You know, there's loads of people putting up their hands. Can I go to you, then we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Aisha. So.
Yeah, just a little statement to make about the kill all white men. I think it's like it says a lot that people are more scared to be called racist than think about like why whatever like these statements actually come.
That's a really interesting point.
No, just from what I've heard, I just can like it's common saying that I can see there's a huge factor between the two discourse, because at the end it's just like a way of talking. It's just like a really small subculture, if I would call it, within like the radical left, cisgender. I mean, all this, yeah. Like that's a way of talking, and when you bring that to the public sphere, it shows how there's such like a massive fracture, and that could you actually is there space for conversation?
It's probably an inappropriate title, isn't it, if you look at it in out of context. That's the issue.
Yeah.
I think kill all white men. I would read that, and particularly coming from a student union official, etc. I don't see that. I don't take that as an order, right? To go out there and kill all white men. However, is it unnecessarily offensive? Probably. It's not going to make you many friends, is it? So I think when you look at it out of context, it's just as I remember reading it when it all happened, and when you look at it out of context, and part of me actually was quite chuffed, because there's a bit of me which thinks that students aren't bolshy enough. That's what I say when I'm on campus, when I'm teaching. They're not as bolshy as we were when I was a union official. And so in that bit, you thought, well, at least there's something still going on. But then the old fart in me reads it and says, do you know what? That's just not going to work for you, is it? And as somebody who's been ripped apart in the press for things that have been taken out of context, it's just the game. You know, once they get you, you've got no chance. The thing is just to get into a bunker and let it all go away, because you've left yourself open by saying something which white men are the journalists, and quite frankly, you've had it. So you've said this, you've had it, and it is an inappropriate thing to say, in my opinion. Kill all white men doesn't get you a lot of friends, although I completely understand the context in which she was saying it, and I think your point is perfectly correct, that taken out of ice, you know, it's an inappropriate phrase. It's a phrase that's used, but it's an inappropriate phrase still, in my opinion. So I think when you say kill all white men, you don't leave yourself, it's like you say, you don't leave yourself anywhere to go.
Does anyone have anything else to add? Aisha?
To me, it just seems that really at the heart of the discussion is around power and privilege. Ultimately, in the broadcast media, obviously, you're the minority of the minority. You know, in BBC as an example, in a professional environment at the BBC. So when you think about when she presented that concept, because that's what it is, it's a concept. Maybe a concept for discussion, which is why we talked about it and we're still talking about it now. It's quite useful for that to engage people in a different way around ideas of race and equality and privilege and power. And yes, sometimes these things make us feel uncomfortable because it's about something that is emotionally attached to us, especially in the creative sector. As an artist and a lecturer, part of the UAL system, you know, I think that these are the kinds of subjects we have to be talking about, because we have to, as a community of practitioners, creative practitioners, we need to unpack some of the things that we leave aside. We leave aside because it's uncomfortable. You know, I think this is a great opportunity to discuss, you know, the ideologies behind power and privilege, and focusing on the social media and broadcast media, which is, you know, predominantly white male as an industry.
Rishma, do you want to focus on power and privilege in the media?
Yeah, whatever you ask me. I think that's what it is. I think when I'm talking about why kill all white men doesn't mean what it means, like go out and let's all kill all white men, because literally I don't think she put herself out well, because I think when it comes to power and privilege, who are the people controlling the media? She should have been a bit more wary of that. It is white men, and they are not going to understand what you're saying, and also they're going to need a reason to tear down whatever you work for. And being people of colour, when they're doing activism or, you know, Black Lives Matter or whatever, they need a reason to tear it down, because I believe they do have an agenda, and that they're keeping up the whole the system that they have that keeps them in privilege. They're using the media and things like that to make sure that they stay in the hierarchy, because that's kind of what they are doing. So when you use a platform like Twitter, and you're a person who's in sort of a leadership role as well, Baha being a student officer, you are going to be teared down by the exact people, the people who needed a reason to tear you down in the first place. So yes, the choice of words weren't great. Okay, it sounds very violent, but the scrutiny she got, I don't think, you know, that's what she deserved, because there are so many hashtags out there that are way more offensive. No one is going to question those, because it doesn't put people in the position of power. It doesn't question them. Kill all white men questions those people, whereas kill all Muslim, who cares? They're Muslims. Who cares? No one's questioning who did that.
Lawrence, what do you think?
Please remind me of the question. Yeah.
We're talking about power and privilege in the media, and like especially the hierarchy of the media. So why are certain issues? Why does it get latched onto by the media? Why does it seem more important than?
Yeah. I just feel until the media and the upper echelons of the media reflect society, like the makeup of society. There'll always be contentious issues because it is white male dominated. Let's be honest about it. And if any of you students don't know, then you know now. It is. That's just how it is. And it's, you know, I've worked at the BBC, not as long as short term, not as long as a kill, but it's back to this thing about the cultural makeup and the type of people. And you know, I did work with a couple of the other black journalists at the time, but I later found out they were Oxford, Cambridge, kind of, you know, quite middle class, quite well to do. And I just feel that the people making the decisions and the management, the top management, it has to be more reflective. And just staff in general just has to be more reflective of the country we live in. And that's, you know, that's everything, isn't it? That's class, that's race, that's sexuality, gender, sexuality, I was about to say gender. Because then when you've got voices in higher positions, they're going to say, actually, you know what? You know, if you've got Muslim voice in higher position, say, you know what, actually, you can't put that out as part of your agenda. That's not going to work. You know, you can challenge it. But if you've just got, it's like having a club, isn't it? If you've got your group of mates and you're controlling something, you can do pretty much well what you want. You've got people under you who might challenge you, but you're making all the decisions. You know, the Director General, everyone under. I don't know how many black, Aaqil, how many black senior, real senior from, you know, so Tony Hall and under him, the 5 most senior people at the BBC, what do they look like?
Well, I'm not here to represent the BBC in that sense.
No, it's just a question, because I don't know. So you work there. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing to remember is actually, is it all about white men? Actually, no, it's about, but you could argue it's about white people, because most, in broadcast television in particular, has changed radically over the last 15, 20 years. And most of the people running a lot of the TV now are women. Particularly the controllers of BBC 1 and 2 and Channel 4, Radio 4, the director of radio, I could go on. These are all women. You know, the controller of factual programming, the controller of all these people. I mean, the head of drama at the BBC, a woman. I could go on and on and on. So it's not all about white men. So we need to get that argument. That ship sailed a hell of a long time ago. I think the point about culture and whatever the culture that you create is a different issue. And yeah, you know, I'm a senior manager at the BBC. I don't know how long I'll be there for after this, you know, but there aren't that many of us. And I suppose, you know, it's really funny. When I was at Channel 4, I used to do all sorts of stuff, and no one was that bothered. Occasionally, we used to get shock horror articles. But I remember when I got offered this job and I decided to take it, and one of my colleagues said to me, "Part of the establishment now," and I went, "Yeah." And I didn't realise what he was saying, and then all hell broke loose. And it was like, you know, articles in the Telegraph. Why Aaqil? I mean, this is the snappiest title ever. You discussed this one. It's better than Gotcha. The title was "Why Aaqil Ahmed should not be the head of religion and ethics at the BBC." That's what it says on the tin. But that's a newspaper article headline, and it goes back to that whole big thing, which is, I know that journalist now. I've met that journalist, and he wrote an article about 6 to 9 months later which said, you should never meet people you're nasty to, because when you meet them, they always turn out to be nice guys. And unfortunately, I met Aaqil Ahmed last night, and he's actually all right. And then he got loads of abuse from right-wingers online saying, "What's this bloody Muslim promised you," kind of thing. But the thing is, when he was writing all those articles, he's writing for the Daily Telegraph, which at that time, their audience, or the Daily Mail, or whatever it is, for their audience, pinko, lefty, liberal media bloke at the BBC, tick. Muslim, tick. Brown person, tick. Northerner, oh, tick. I could go on and on. Their audience thought, of course, this guy is a dream for them. You know, the journalist actually isn't that bothered. What he said to a friend, another journalist at the Telegraph who I know, went up to him and said, "Oi, what are you writing all this crap about this guy for? He doesn't deserve all this. I haven't met that guy. He's not the root of all evil, like you suggest." And his exact words were, "Hey, man, the readers are loving it." And that's the reality. We have to just accept that we live in, whether it's television or newspapers or whatever, is that in general, well, it's just a business. It's a multi-billion-pound-a-year business, and businesses, newspapers, write things because their audience want it. You know, you don't like the Sun, don't buy the Sun, but don't then tell the Sun they can't print what they like, because the people who read the Sun, that's what they buy it for. You know, and if you like Sky News, if you like, I don't know, Fox News, then you'll want Fox News. So I fully accept it, I understand it. Do I like it? No, I don't. And we have to change it. And the last point I'll make is, when you become a person who has the ability to decide what people watch, read, or whatever it is, then you can change things. And I've been fortunate to have had that position, as have other people as well, and we have changed things. So the programs that I've made, they have only been made because I was in that position to do it. So we need more people to be in the positions, and that requires, and it is possible, because if a working class boy from Bolton, that's in Manchester, by the way, if you don't know where Bolton is. Yeah, because our football team's so bad you won't know what, I won't even recognise it from football. If I can do that without any kind of background in the industry, then anybody else can do it. And the fact of the matter is, all my friends who've done it as well, but the vast majority of us who started out in '92 did not make it. And that's not because of any kind of racism, that's for white people as well, because only a few people can get through, so you need a lot of people to actually have mid-ranking careers, fail at some point for people to get on, because it's not as easy as it seems. But there are people who get there, and then they make that difference, and it can make a big difference.
There's 2 points that you touched on, because we're going to end the conversation shortly. So firstly, I was at a conference the other day, and we was talking about, like, if you don't like white privilege, what can you do? And it's just simple. If you don't like white privilege, stop reading it, stop buying it, stop endorsing it. It's that simple. Don't buy The Sun, don't buy these papers, look for alternative medias to find news from and support them. And secondly, I want everyone to leave here feeling really positive. So you just gave a great piece of advice of what people can do to be in the media. Do you all want to give 1 point each of, like, self-confidence and being in the media, and also staying true to your values? And I'll start with Rimsha.
You start with another one, because I need to think.
Okay, you need to think. Okay, I'll start with Lauren.
Pretty much like a kill. I didn't have any, what's the word? I basically worked hard to get, I didn't have any privilege. I'm not loaded, or, you know, I wasn't in a nice private school, wasn't shipped off to a fancy Russell Group uni, but I really believed in what I was doing. And I always say, when I started in journalism, I started writing about music, primarily because I couldn't sing or I couldn't rap, but I liked music, so I started writing about it. And I say I wasn't the best technical writer, but I was really passionate, so I just used to really write about things which moved me, artists, bands, then later about sport. And I think, really and truly, and I'm not being self-deprecating, I think really and truly I was never the best, but my passion and my desire kind of really helped push me through. And I'll give a quick example. So I went to, I did my BA at Humberside Uni, and I remember getting ready to do work experience for the summer, because obviously, you know, students get a nice long summer. And I literally sat in the student union office and I phoned up, I reckon I must have phoned up all the radio stations in London, newspapers, magazines, TV, and I kept persisting for about a week. So basically my summer was taken up with work experience at Channel 4, the Voice newspaper, I worked at Mercury Records, and I just got loads and loads of experience. So by the time I graduated a year later, I walked into my first kind of junior job at a radio station called KISS. But I think that was, I know that was because of my strategy in arranging the work experience, doing what I had to do when I had the work experience. I'm talking working 14-hour shifts, you know, just doing it, and then being willing and being interested. And like I said, it took a year because I had to graduate, and then I was able to build my career from there. So I think if you really want to build a career in what you do, kind of study it, do your background work, be prepared to work for free, You know, it's what you have to do at some time. At some point, you'll earn money, but you have to be prepared. Because I see you shaking your head, but I'll tell you why. I can understand
Depends
why.
what kind of
Depends,
how long
but
does
for a
it
point,
is
I said for a point, because you've got to remember there's going to be someone more hungry than you. So I'm saying work for free, and you're like,
if they have the money
well,
to work
yeah.
for free, it's fine. They can take it, and they will just reproduce the exact system of white people
but to a
having the money
point. But I
to
said,
be able
but I
to
said
afford
to
it.
a point. But I said to a point. I said to a point. And because if I'm employing now, and I'm saying people work for free, and they're like, and you're like. Then I'm because but the thing is, look, we've all done it. I can empathise with you because London's expensive, but we've all done it. I've done it. I've done it. I've done it. I've done it. I have done it. I've done it. I've worked for free and I've got to a point. I've done it. So can you.
And I think it's. I think this will definitely be discussed at the next
Okay, let me be positive. Okay, yeah.
Don't think so aggressive.
but fair point. But just have a passion for what you do, and within reason, do what you have to do within reason to get to where you want to go. Yes, you good?
It's a really interesting thing. Like, how do creatives, it's really hard for you. I respect you so much. So for you to say you worked at all these different industries and you've done it for free, how can we now justify it 10 years down the line when students have so much debt?
Yeah.
Housing in London is so expensive. If you're an international student, there's so many different barriers to working for free, but I do think it's important that you gain experience. And if that means that you're eating beans for a week, you eat those beans and you work.
Do you know when I had to work for free as well? My dad didn't understand it. He couldn't get his head around it at all. But I worked for free. But I was in the evenings. I was working as a waiter to be able to pay because I didn't have that lifestyle. So there's one thing I just want to make a point of here, and I'm just going to just say this, which is we keep talking about white people, right? For me, I've gone way beyond that now. It's nothing to do with that. It's about class, right?
Yes.
Yes and no, but it's about class, and that is actually, a black person or an Asian person or whatever who is a middle class person from a private education, etc., may have less to say about multiculturalism than some working class person in Dewsbury who's white. So I think we need, and if you talk about people not getting on, because you mentioned the word, white, that will perpetuate that white person.
No,
but you said it. The thing is, but wait, right? You said something, so you have to stand by what you said. Because you can't just throw it out there, then retract it after.
Yes,
so you said it. Let's use the Twitter example. You tweeted that white will continue to reproduce white people. Well, actually, we're not. We're continuing to reproduce a cultural liberal elite with its own particular views, who do not like people who have other views which may not be the same as theirs. And so that's one point for us to all. I would really, when you all go, please think about that, which is it's not about race anymore. That's way gone beyond that now. It's about class and all those other issues. And to get on, I would say understand the world around you like that, and do exactly what was said. Work hard, and you will have to work for free at some point. Not necessarily always. I don't agree with it in principle, but I understand I did it, and everybody else has done it, and so therefore it's very hard to break that. But more importantly, think about what are the things that would stop you getting the role you want to get, and what can you do about that? And that might be experience, but it also might be changing things about your perception of how people perceive you as well.
Thank you.
I would say, whatever you do, I don't know what everyone does, but whatever you do, sometimes you do have to stick your neck up and just do it. So sometimes you will have things that do for free, because in a way to get into it, because this is how, again, I think it's the whole system. And to get into the system in order to change it, you have to get in. So sometimes you do have to do certain things, but I would say stick by what you believe in. So I think the biggest thing you could do as young people in this generation is to challenge the rhetoric, basically. So challenge things that have been said. So I don't know, again, it depends on what everyone's studying, what you're going to do. But just challenge the people in power, and then take your ranks and take control of what's going on. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
You said just work hard, but a white person get the job over me as much as hard as I work, basically. And that's
I tell you what, I work in Salford as well as London. If you don't know these places, I'm telling you, you do not know these places. And if you're in the high unemployment
it's
that...
not even just about like where you're from, like your name. So if I was to apply as my name, then I was like, Lucy would get the job rather than me. It's like this. Even before they interview me, if I was to box white instead of and show up, I probably wouldn't get the job. But it is a race issue.
I think it is a
And
race
for you to
issue.
say it is,
No, race is part of it. What I'm talking...
you're saying race is not.
No. I said it's beyond that now. Race
I don't think so.
No, race comes into it.
All right, so
No,
guys,
sorry, can I just make this point? Because it's quite important. I mean, if it's been misunderstood, I would hate it to be misunderstood.
we've got people on the
No, I would hate it to be misunderstood. It's a very important point because actually you really misunderstood me, and I'm really sorry about that. No, the point I'm making is we can't just say it's all about race. It's a lot of things.
What about you say, for you to dismiss it to me?
Hey, listen, look at me. Listen, you look at me. Do you think I don't know about bloody race? Yeah, think about it. Yeah, seriously. I mean, but the bigger thing for me that has been the bigger problem, the bigger barrier for the things that I might want to do now for the sake of argument. Yeah, no one cared before when I was coming up the system. Race would have been a bigger issue then. The bigger issue now is whether or not they think you fit in culturally because I'm a working class Pakistani boy from Bolton. Do not fit in with the areas that I would aspire to now. And that, for me, is a bigger issue. All of those things. Is race one of them? Yeah. Do they have perceptions of me as a Muslim? Of course they do, because there's unconscious bias in all of us. But right now, the accent, the educational background, all of that kind of stuff, at this particular level that I'm working in, is the biggest barrier for me. So that's why I'm saying it's not black and white. There are so many different things that can stop you. That's what I want to leave you with.
I want to thank you all so much.
Can I leave with one part? Okay, so guys, I just want to say something really positive. All of you in the room are change makers. What you've heard today is about, I guess, empowering each other and recognising who's the best person for the role. All of you, I would imagine, at some point in your lives will go off and be employers. So just keep that in your mind.